All right, so you've got this track in your head.
Okay.
Killer melody, driving beat, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And you're ready to bring it to life in Pro Tools.
Right.
But this time,
Yeah.
we're not just hitting record on a mic or an instrument.
Okay.
We're going deeper into the matrix, using MIDI to unlock a whole new level of creative control.
That's right. Think of MIDI, or musical instrument digital interface, as the language that your electronic instruments and software use to talk to each other. And Pro Tools is fluent in this language.
Okay, so it's like instead of recording the actual sound,
Yeah.
we're capturing the instructions for creating that sound.
Exactly. It's like the difference between writing down every single brushstroke of a painting versus having a set of instructions that tell you exactly what colors to mix and where to put them.
And with MIDI, those instructions can control a ridiculous range of sounds.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking everything from a realistic grand piano to a wobbly, distorted synth bass line,
Yeah.
all within Pro Tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the real magic starts to happen when you combine this control with Pro Tools MIDI editor.
All right, let's unpack this MIDI editor.
Okay.
What are we looking at here?
Imagine a digital sheet music, but instead of being stuck with what's on the page, you can grab each note, move it around, stretch it out, squeeze it basically, become a musical sculptor.
So it's visual music editing right there in Pro Tools.
You got it. You can see all your MIDI notes laid out on a grid, which gives you incredible precision over timing and duration.
Okay.
Need that snare hit to land a hair earlier, just drag it over. Want to turn a single note into a sustained chord? Easy peasy, just stretch it out.
And the best part is I don't have to be a musical genius to use it. I'm not exactly Mozart over here.
Don't worry, that's the beauty of it. Pro Tools gives you different ways to view this information.
Okay.
If traditional music notation is your jam, cool, you can see it that way. But if you're more of a visual learner, you can switch to the piano roll view, which is like a graphical representation of a keyboard. It's all about finding what clicks with your brain.
So no matter how you approach music,
Right.
there's a way to make MIDI work for you in Pro Tools.
Exactly. And once you've got your notes laid out, that's where quantization comes in.
Okay.
Think of it like your secret weapon for tight, perfectly timed tracks.
Okay, quantization.
Yeah.
It sounds a little intimidating, like
Uh,
something a scientist would do.
It's actually a lifesaver, especially if, like most humans, your timing isn't always perfect.
Right.
Quantization gently nudges those slightly off notes into perfect alignment with the beat.
So if I'm tapping out a beat on my MIDI keyboard
Right.
and I'm a little ahead or behind sometimes,
Yeah.
quantization cleans it up.
Exactly. It's like having a microscopic metronome that fine-tunes everything for you. Now, you might be thinking, won't that make my music sound robotic?
Yeah, actually.
And you'd be right. Sometimes it does.
Okay.
That's why Pro Tools has these amazing groove settings for quantization.
Here's where it gets really cool, right? Like we're adding some soul back into the machine.
You know it. Groove quantization adds those subtle variations in timing that make music feel human.
Okay.
You could even sample the groove from another track, like a real drummer, and apply it to your MIDI instruments.
Whoa, so you're basically capturing the feel of a live performance.
You got it. It's like having a session drummer lay down the perfect groove, and then you get to use that same feel for your synths, bass lines, anything you want.
That's incredible. So we've got the notes down, the timing's locked in.
Right.
What other MIDI tricks does Pro Tools have up its sleeve?
Well, let's say you've got this killer melody, but it's not quite in the right key. Instead of moving each note up or down manually,
Yeah.
Pro Tools lets you just grab the whole thing
Yeah.
and shift it to a new key instantly with the transposer.
Okay, that's way less tedious than what I was imagining. No more note-by-note surgery just to change keys. What about adding expression to those notes? You know, like the way a real musician would play.
Pro Tools has got you covered there, too. Remember how MIDI isn't just about the notes themselves?
Okay.
It's about all those performance details. Velocity is one we touched on earlier,
Right.
but it's worth revisiting.
Right. Velocity, basically how hard you hit the keys, which translates to volume in the digital world.
Exactly. But here's the cool part. You can go in and fine-tune the velocity of every single MIDI note. Want a really percussive piano part? Crank up the velocity on those initial hits. Going for a softer, more delicate vibe. Dial it back a bit.
It's like having superhuman control over the dynamics of the music.
And we can take this even further with automation. Imagine you've got a synth part.
Yeah.
and you want it to gradually get louder throughout a section. Or maybe you want a pan effect to sweep from left to right, creating this really cool stereo image.
Ooh, like it's swirling around the listener's head. I love that.
Exactly. Instead of having to twist knobs in real time while the music is playing, you can draw in those changes over time using automation lanes in Pro Tools. It's like choreographing the movement of sound.
So you're not just playing the notes. You're controlling how they evolve and interact throughout the song.
Precisely. And speaking of control, let's talk about CC control.
Oh?
Which might sound a little technical,
Right.
but it's where things get really interesting.
Okay, hit me with it. What is this CC control all about?
CC stands for control change.
Okay.
And it lets you manipulate very specific parameters within your virtual instruments. Think of it like having a mixing board with knobs and faders for days. But instead of being physical, it's all virtual, all within Pro Tools.
So what kinds of things can I tweak with these virtual knobs?
Oh man, pretty much anything you can imagine. You can control filters, which shape the tone of a sound, so you can make it brighter, darker, more resonant, whatever you're hearing in your head. You can adjust the cutoff frequency, add vibrato for that wobbly effect, and so much more.
So if I want my synth to sound like it's slowly melting, I can do that with CC control.
You absolutely can. And the best part is, just like with volume and panning, you can automate those CC parameters too. So you could create a filter sweep that gradually opens up over time, or a vibrato effect that gets more intense as the song builds.
This is next level sound design. It's amazing how much control you have over every little detail.
And all of this is before we even talk about plugging in a physical MIDI controller.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about those. This is where I geek out a little bit. So for our listeners who might not know, we're talking about things like MIDI keyboards, drum pads, those kinds of things, right?
Exactly. And what's so cool is that you can connect those controllers directly to Pro Tools and record your MIDI performances in real time.
Okay.
So instead of drawing in notes with a mouse, you can lay them down on a keyboard, capturing the nuances of your playing.
It's like bridging the gap between the physical and digital worlds. You're getting the feel of playing a real instrument, but with all the flexibility and editing power of MIDI.
Precisely. And with a good MIDI controller, you can capture even more than just the notes themselves. You can record velocity, aftertouch, those CC parameters we were talking about, all those subtle variations that make a performance come alive.
This is blowing my mind. It's like Pro Tools becomes an extension of your musical imagination.
And speaking of musical imagination, we haven't even scratched the surface of virtual instruments yet.
Oh, right. We have to talk about those. They're like the secret sauce of modern music production.
For real. Virtual instruments, or VSTs as they're sometimes called, are basically software versions of real instruments.
Right.
But they can be so much more than that. We're talking hyper-realistic pianos, vintage synths, even instruments that don't exist in the real world.
It's like having an infinite orchestra at your fingertips.
Exactly. And the best part is, Pro Tools integrates with these virtual instruments seamlessly. You can control them with your MIDI keyboard, program intricate sequences in the MIDI editor, manipulate their sound with automation and CC control. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, so let's say I'm sold on this whole virtual instrument thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly made of money. Do I need a ton of expensive plugins to get started?
Not at all. Pro Tools actually comes loaded with some awesome built-in virtual instruments.
Okay.
Xpandtot 2, for example, is this incredible workstation with a massive library of sounds. You can use it for everything from orchestral arrangements to synth leads to sound design. It's super versatile.
So even without spending an extra dime, you can still create some seriously impressive stuff.
Absolutely. And for those who love crafting beats, there's Boom, which is Pro Tools' built-in drum sampler and sequencer.
That's right. I've heard producers get amazing results with Boom. It's like having a wall of classic drum machines and acoustic kits all in one place.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It's mind-blowing how much power we have at our fingertips. I mean, we've gone from clunky old tape machines to having a whole virtual studio inside our computers.
And what's fascinating is that we're not just replicating the tools of the past, we're creating entirely new possibilities with MIDI. Think about it.
You okay?
You can edit performances with surgical precision, bend time to your will, even combine sounds in ways that would be physically impossible with real instruments.
It's like the line between musician and mad scientist is getting delightfully blurry.
Totally. And the best part is that Pro Tools doesn't force you down one path or another. You can be as meticulous or as experimental as you want. You can draw in every single note, or you can capture the raw energy of a live performance with a MIDI controller.
It really feels like MIDI in Pro Tools unlocks a whole new dimension of expression. We've talked about all these technical tools, but
Right.
ultimately it's about serving the music.
100%. Whether you're composing for film, producing the next EDM banger, or just jamming out in your bedroom. Understanding these MIDI tools gives you the power to translate what you're hearing in your head into reality.
It's like you're no longer limited by the physical constraints of instruments or recording techniques. If you can dream it, you can probably create it with MIDI in Pro Tools.
And that's what's so exciting. This deep dive has just scratched the surface. There are endless creative possibilities to explore with MIDI. We encourage you to dive into Pro Tools, experiment, and see what you can discover.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to get in there, play around, and even break some rules along the way. Who knows what kind of sonic magic you might create?
So to all you music makers out there, remember, MIDI isn't just some technical jargon, it's a language of creativity. And with Pro Tools as your translator, you can say anything you want.